Good morning, I'm Howard Hurtig. This is June 18th, 2015, San Diego at the 19th Congress of the Parkinson's and Movement Disorder Society. I'm here with Dr. Matthew Stern.
And I'm Dr. Matthew Stern. I'm the immediate outgoing president of the International Parkinson and Movement Disorder Society, and I'm a professor of neurology at the University of Pennsylvania.
So Matt, this is a rare opportunity. We see each other, we've worked together for many, many years, but we rarely sit down and have a conversation, and this is the time to do that.
Yep, this is terrific. It's a great privilege.
Yeah, and my privilege as well to review our 33-year or more history of our partnership. So what do you remember about the very beginning when we got together?
Well, I remember getting interested in neuroscience and in particular neuropharmacology when I spent a summer at the National Institute of Mental Health and Medical School. And it was at a time when discoveries were being made about chemicals in the spinal fluid, and the whole era of developing antidepressants began, and the drug treatment of diseases like Parkinson's disease were really relatively in their infancy. And it was very interesting and exciting for me. And then I came to Penn, did my residency, and met you. And had a dilemma. Was I going to stay in Philadelphia? I had a job back at Duke, where I went to medical school. But after spending a lot of time with you and I decided that we could do something really great together, and that's where this all began.
What about that night when it all came together? Do you remember that?
I do remember that vividly. I had already accepted a job at Duke, and we actually, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and we had bought a house in Durham, North Carolina. We were set to go, and I remember sitting down at a bar and stumbling out with you several hours later, and my life changed forever. And I suspect so did yours.
Right. I think the other coincidence was that I had just taken a job at an affiliated hospital in our University of Pennsylvania program. And I think that probably was the eye-opener for you, because here was a great opportunity that didn't exist 6 months before. It was announced that I was moving to a graduate hospital.
Right, and the idea of building something together and from the start, from scratch, at a time when there were limitless possibilities, was very exciting to me, and ultimately is why I stayed in Philadelphia to build and develop what has become the comprehensive Parkinson's and Movement Disorder Center at Penn.
So as I recall, in the earliest days of my move to graduate hospital, I had hired a young nurse named Gwen Melvin, who later became Gwen Vernon, and we had started a Parkinson's Disease Information Center sponsored by the American Parkinson's Disease Association. And tell me if I'm wrong on this, but once you came on board a year later, you said, we need to have a broader vision. Let's create a movement disorders center.
Right. And that was before, there were very few programs at that point in the country that called themselves movement disorder centers. There were a few, but certainly nothing in our region, in Philadelphia. And the three of us sat down and said, we have this information referral center. We're starting to get patients. We're starting to be recognized as a place to go. But we have no structure and we have no vision. And at that point, and that was 1983, I think. So
82.
82 is when I started, and then I think in January of 83, we said let's start the program, and we actually were very direct about it. We sort of sat down and said the first thing we need to do is be good doctors, be good clinicians, and let's make this a comprehensive clinical program from which we'll build a research and education program. And that's pretty much what we did.
And thinking back in those days, what did you have a prediction of where we might be 33 years later?
What I remember most is that I really enjoyed coming to work, and I've heard you say this too. That it was fun to be together and do this as friends and as partners, and with Gwen as well. That was fun. And what made it even better is when we started to interact with our colleagues around the country. And I remember we very early on had this idea that why don't we sponsor an educational program? And that was the first Bermuda conference that was just done with you, me, David Marsden, Stan Fawn, and after the first year was Warren Lanow. So here the five of us were, and we got to know David and Stan very well at this event. And I was just, at that point, I was in my early 30s and just beginning a career, but that was made such an impression on me. And that was the time when I realized that this was going to be my field. And then shortly after that, we got together with this consortium of North American investigators, and the Parkinson Study Group was formed. And here was this relatively small group of really good people dedicated to improving the lives of patients with Parkinson's. And then shortly after that came the Movement Disorder Society. And I started coming to these meetings. I was at the first meeting and have, I think, been to almost every meeting since, and gradually got more and more involved with the society.
When you started out, you were in your, early 30s. What were your fears at that time? Did you have any, or did you feel so confident that you knew that this was going to work the way it has?
No, I was tremendously anxious. I don't know about what, but it was just who I was. I guess my biggest fear in making the decision to stay in Philadelphia was that was the first time that I sort of stepped off of what had been a very traditional academic path, including the job I had that I turned down, or actually that I changed my mind to stay in Philadelphia. And we were at an affiliated hospital, so we weren't at the main hospital. I knew at that point we were really essentially going off on our own to do something. And my fear was that it wouldn't succeed, and I would have given up an opportunity to pursue a more traditional academic career. That fear lasted a very short time.
But my thinking, and when you do a retrospective, you might distort your memory, was that you had from the very beginning a really vitally important entrepreneurial view of where we were going to go. That we were at an affiliated hospital, but we weren't constrained by being in the big mothership, and therefore we had a lot of flexibility and latitude to create something that we might not have been able to do if we were part of a much bigger place.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I wouldn't sell yourself short on this, because this was truly a partnership, and the relationships that you and I had with people in the community, our patients, really attracted an influx of support, financial support, emotional support, community support. And that was really, really important to our success, because we were able to build a program we never would have been able to build with the constraints of today's rigorous obstacles in a big institution. We had some philanthropists that got involved with us very early on, and ultimately that morphed into a foundation. We began to bring in other people. We brought in a social worker. We became affiliated with the National Parkinson Foundation. We were one of their first centers outside of Miami. That was in 1991 or 1992. So and as research was evolving, as new treatments became available, we were very much a part of it every step of the way. And here we are now with one of the biggest programs in the world.
So why do you think you and I have been so successful in our partnership? Well, what are the elements of that have made it work? Because it's pretty rare for people to stay together.
I think it's, it's because we started out as friends, and that was always the most important thing. And I think it's colored my approach to my entire career in this field, is that we work with a terrific group of people, not just terrific at home. And as I said, I always enjoyed coming to work. I always enjoyed seeing you and sitting down and talking about life, not just what we did day to day. And I think that's also true for my relationship with people in the field at large, and certainly is what got me so interested in the society, is that we really work with a great group of colleagues and peers, and the collegiality and the friendship has really enhanced our ability to make advances in the field, I think.
So here's a recollection. I don't think I've ever talked to you about this. When you first started, I was a little nervous because you were up and coming, you were ambitious, you had great ideas. I was older and your boss, and I was worried that I might get in your way because here I was more established, you were just starting, and
let me just put this in context. You were 37 years old, right?
Well,
38, 39?
Actually, no. When I
guess
moved
40.
to graduate, I was in my early 40s.
Yeah, I guess you were 40.
And you were in your early 30s. But one thing I was really conscious of was to make sure you succeeded. And I've felt like part of that strategy would be for me to make room and maybe give up some of the things that I might want to do. That sounds a little bit perhaps self-serving.
No, I think I always felt that. I always felt that I was running around the world a lot and you were sort of holding down the fort, and that you did that very consciously, that was very conscious of you to allow me to go out and do what I felt I needed to do. It ultimately benefited all of us, but I always felt that was a very conscious decision on your part.
I'm glad to hear that because it was conscious, and I was also head of a department where there was a lot of things that needed to be done at home. And the way I've framed it and have told other people about our success is that you were Mr. Outside and I was Mr. Inside.
Yeah.
And even though I had outside interest and I stayed involved with organizations and made relationships outside of the home department. But I think that, from my point of view, is one of the tickets for why we have done so well together.
No question about it, and I felt that from the very beginning. The interesting thing to me is that when we get together with our former fellows and trainees, of which there are now a lot, they always talk about being mentored by both of us.
Right.
So it was a partnership that worked that way, and I obviously appreciate your allowing me to go out and do what I needed to do to be happy. And there were so many things you did to keep the home fires burning normally, and you smoothed the way for me. There are all those things in dealing with the administrative hassles of the home office that you took care of. I didn't have to.
Right.
So there's no question that was part of the beauty of this.
Yeah. I'm always struck when one of our best fellows who's done so well, Tanya Simuni, whenever she does a presentation, she always gives us credit for being her mentor.
Right, these 20 years later.
Yeah.
That's the most gratifying thing to me at this stage of my life. I know you feel the same way, that for us to see all these people that came through our show that we created now 30 years ago is the most delightful and gratifying thing for me. And when I come to the society meetings and I see these people flourishing, it's a great thrill.
So you've just finished your 2 years as president. You have 2 more years in a lesser role as past president. Then what?
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time as president. There's so much that happens in this society, and again, it's the people, the secretariat, the support staff, the colleagues have made this a really enriching experience for me and a great way to wind down a little bit my career. I hope to continue to stay involved in ways that I can be helpful to this organization, and I intend to do that.
So it's been 3 or 4 days since you turned the gavel over to Oscar Kishanek. Have you started to feel any letdown?
Yes, I am a little let down. There's a little bit of anticlimax here and all that, but I know it's the right time, and I think As one of my predecessors, Warren Alanow, said, the nice thing about this organization is it seems like the president at the time has always been the right person for the job, and there's no question in my mind that Oscar Gershanik is the right person for the job at this particular time.
And how would you size up that that statement in regard to your presidency? What about it made you the right person at the right time?
Well, I think these were fairly challenging times with changing relationships with our industry partners, and I'm very proud of the fact that our membership has continued to grow, that we are financially strong, and that we have built more educational programs around the world by far than in any prior year, and that a lot of our programs have really excelled, and I'm proud of that. I think this society is really in good shape right now. So I feel like I'm leaving it as strong as I could have possibly left it.
Switching back to education of young people, at the current state, how do you see that playing out down the road with regard to residency training, fellowship training? What do you think that we're doing a good job of training people back home?
I think we are. I mean, we now have a comprehensive crew of people. We have people in many different branches of research in movement disorders. I think that they're all good mentors. So I think we do have a strong educational program. What do you think?
Yeah, I somehow feel like we haven't finished building what we need to. Maybe I'm a little bit sort of jaded about that, but I'm thinking that the goal that we have is not only to train people who are excellent doctors, but also the next generation of clinical researchers and beyond. And some of our fellows have done a great job becoming good clinicians and have actually gone back into the lab where they had trained before they did their neurology residency. I may be wrong on that. And I haven't sampled the opinions of our former fellows to see if they have any regrets or things that they think should have happened during their fellowship.
Well, I think for you and I have talked about this, but I think at this stage of our careers, certainly mentoring younger faculty and trainees is probably the most important thing that I will do for the rest of my career. And I get a real kick out of seeing our fellows and residents and trainees go out around the country and around the world and succeed, and I hope that we will continue to be able to do that.
So one question that always comes up when people that I've trained or that I know have asked me, how do you keep a balance between work and life in general to keep an equilibrium so that you don't get totally stressed out or you don't destroy your family because you're working too hard?
Well, it's far too late for that. I will say now publicly that I very rarely brought work home, that I created an environment that you helped me foster where I could do writing, lecture planning during my workday. And I rarely did that when I came home. And I had a young family once, and I remember my son, when he was, actually just a few years ago, said to me that when he was 12 or 13, he wasn't sure I had a job because I was always at his baseball games. It's very challenging. I think it's more challenging today than it was for us because you gave me flexibility. I wasn't hamstrung by the tremendous financial and clinical load burdens that a lot of individuals are now in a big institution like ours. So you have to be much more conscious, I think, today than we were. I also had outside interest, and I also had a lot of friends, and have a lot of friends that are completely unrelated to medicine and completely unrelated to this career. And I married a woman who's intelligent, and she was a lawyer once and then a teacher, and was always able to make me feel normal.
Mm-hmm. Were you disappointed at any point, or more recently, that any of your 3 children did not go to medical school?
No, I'm not. We brought them up to be independent and to pursue their passions, and that's what they're all doing.
What about regrets? Any major regrets in your career? Here you are, 30-odd years out from training.
You know, I've thought about that a lot, and I really have no regret. I'm being totally honest with it. I mean, I cannot imagine a more rewarding and fulfilling 30 years, and I'll say it again, mostly because, you know, I was lucky enough to find you, and we had a great partnership, and that you can't put a price tag on that. Mm-hmm. And to me, you know, we could have failed in our quest to build a big program, and I still probably, you know, we still probably would have had a lot of fun along the way. And I think more than anything, this has been a lot of fun, and hopefully will continue to be fun.
Did you ever at any point in the early days regret that you didn't go back to Duke?
No, I never regretted that. I remember in the early days thinking that I don't have to do this. I could do something else. I remember thinking, gee, I wonder if I should have gone to business school. Or my mother always said I would have done a lot more for medicine had I gone into business than going into medicine. But I never had any regrets about the direction I went professionally.
So as you look ahead for the rest of your career, you mentioned that the plan is to continue mentoring and being involved. When you look into the future, do you think that maybe you might take a different path and do something totally different? Is that?
I'm trying not to look too hard, but the answer is yes. I can envision. I still feel young. I still feel energetic. I still feel like I've got something to contribute. But it may be a little different. We'll see how it plays out. How about you?
Well, I'm 12 years older than you.
Yes, you are.
I've just sort of retired, and I'm very happy about that because I was ready. There were things that I just didn't want to do anymore. And the two things were, number one, stop being an administrator. And number two, I had gotten sort of a little bit worn out from the practice because it was very demanding. And as you know, it's very difficult taking care of people with chronic progressive neurodegenerative diseases, which is what we do and what we love. Mm-hmm. But it still started to take a toll. And I had some health problems, so it was the right timing and right decision. But because I'm still trying to stay involved and be useful, I think about that a fair amount. What's going to happen? What do I really want to do? What's in my gut about the next 5 to 10 years? You know, in 5 years I'll be 80 years old. That's sort of scary and amazing. But I remember when at my retirement party that you gave, you had collected some of my old colleagues and mentors to speak on camera. And Stan Fon, who was my first mentor, because he had created this huge practice of Parkinson patients when I was a resident at Penn, and he was there before he moved to Columbia. He asked me shortly before he left if I wanted to take over his practice. And at that point, I was in the field of stroke, and that was going to be my academic path. But then I sort of got tired of being in two camps, and the evolution of what was happening in Parkinson's disease was really more exciting. And then when I moved to Graduate Hospital, it was, slam dunk that I was going to continue to build a Parkinson program. And
that was only a few years after Stan left, right?
Stan left in 1973 to go to Columbia. Right. Bud Rowland was chair of Penn Neurology when I was trained. He offered me a job when even before he had decided to move, and I looked forward to working with all the great people in the department at the time. And then, lo and behold, he decides he's going to take the offer to go back to Columbia, where he had spent a lot of his career. And then Stan decided to go with him and a few others. And so fast forward, after a lot of years, Stan was very generous when he congratulated me on my retirement. And he said at the end of his statement, he says, "By the way, I'm still working."
Right.
And I sort of flinched when I saw that and heard it. I said, "Oh my God, he's older than I am, and he's still on the case."
Yeah, well, that's what I say when I think about you.
Any last thoughts? Any
No,
last words?
it's been a great ride. I hope I'll be around for a little bit longer to ride some more.
Yeah, and let me just say, I'm really honored and pleased that we've worked together for all these years. It's been one of those amazing
It has.
coincidences where people come together like random events in the universe, and wow.
Me too.
Yeah,
Onward and upward.
great.